Hey, it's Rachel, and this is Spiritual Crypto. Today I'm going to talk about the origin of seeds, the origin story for seeds. And I don't know, I guess I feel more self-conscious or something because it's like very much my story, as the person who made seeds and struggled for a long time to keep it going and stuff. And I've told versions of the story a lot, so I think I used to have this thing for anyone who's familiar with like the Enneagram. The Enneagram test would always show that I was a type 7. So consuming everything was a big thing for me for a long time. And quote unquote boredom was the thing I was always, I guess, like trying to avoid, or what I thought of as boredom. Over time, I came to believe that boredom doesn't actually exist because, at least in my experience, it was like I would think I was bored and then I would go travel or go to some bar or whatever, consume an experience or a substance or whatever it was. I still have something of this pattern. It was like the quote unquote boredom would trigger that activity to keep me from feeling the anxiety and the pain sitting just underneath that. So now I don't experience boredom very much, but now the reason I brought this up is because as I'm starting to attempt to tell a story about me, which isn't just about like ideas or whatever, I feel like I'm afraid you will be bored. And I know that's also a cover. It's like the same type of misdirection or something, in that it's actually that I'm afraid that I'm going to share something vulnerable and it'll be like not interesting, or that's a synonym for boredom, though. It's a cover for anxiety. It's my own fear of exposing vulnerability or something, and it's just showing up in this other way. So whatever. Anyway, I'm going to give it a shot. And I didn't take any notes or anything like that. I thought I'd just try to do this from memory and kind of see what showed itself to be the sort of like more landmark events or whatever in my head. So yeah, and then also I'm quote unquote bored with this story, but it's just because I'm afraid that you won't like it, or it's not liking it, it's just receiving it, I guess. Receiving it in like an open way. But that's like, moving through that is a lot of what this podcast is supposed to be about for me, so I will try. So Seeds was officially incorporated it was like late February of 2013. I'm really fighting this fear of boring you thing right now. Initially, okay, it actually goes back further than that, in that, so I used to be a stock trader. I should start with this. I used to be a professional stock trader, for anyone who doesn't know, mostly in Chicago at a couple different firms there, what were called prop shops, proprietary trading firms. Basically what happens at those is the firm itself has a bunch of money and they bring on traders and pay them almost nothing as a base salary. And they'll bring like 10 people in at once, and they'll teach you how to trade according to their methodology. And then a couple of those people might show themselves to be able to be consistently profitable, and everybody else will get fired. So I worked at three places like that in Chicago. One was less prop shoppy than the others. And then I worked briefly at a place like that in New York on Wall Street before quitting. Trading was fun. Like I moved to Chicago after I graduated from Duke because I wanted to study improv and comedy writing and like understand. I wanted to perform in part to understand how people like perceived me. I love comedy, but I think a lot of it had to do with growing up in a household with a narcissistic parent, and then now I understand this through therapy and whatever, that there's that thing about mirroring, like if a kid isn't mirrored in a way that resembles reality, then the kid doesn't have any sense of how they appear or are in the world. And it was just so out of whack because my dad was a narcissist and I was like the scapegoat kid who was targeted within the family unit. So I didn't understand. I still don't feel like I have a good understanding of how I guess, how I'm being perceived by multiple people at once, maybe, or something. I've never thought about this aspect of it critically before. In one-on-one interactions, I feel like I have developed a pretty strong ability to feel the other person's emotions. I mean, I definitely think I can, if anything, I was taking on way too much of that from other people for a long period of time. But I don't know, just the mirror thing still isn't there. It's not healed yet. So I don't know how I'm perceived. It's just a strange problem, but I'm sure anyone out there who grew up in a narcissistic household, like in my household, it was like, I guess it's typically either two narcissists if you have two parents, or one's a narcissist and one's an enabler. And in my household, it was a narcissist and an enabler. So it was like I got kind of both sides of that, and that it was like the targeting from the narcissist and then like abandoning and neglect from the enabler more. So yeah, it's like, anyway, and then I feel like I'm navel gazing too much and going into this, but so that was part of why performing was interesting and improv was interesting. And I knew that like a bunch of people, Tina Fey, Chris Farley, tons of people had gone through Second City. And when I was a junior in college, I came out to LA very briefly to study film at USC because Duke had like a bootleg film program. So they would send you to USC if you actually wanted to go to what was thought to be a good film school. And I thought I hated LA. Yeah, it just felt flat to me or something. There wasn't a lot of culture and I didn't like driving. And yeah, so it seemed like if I went to Chicago and like went through the programs at Second City and stuff, then I would have sort of more of a path or something rather than like trying to come out to LA or something and like be a starving artist or whatever that would be at 22. So that's what I did. I went to Chicago, and then like trading was my night job while I was there. It was a day job, and then I worked a night shift, trading the European shift for like a year and a half or something like that. And I guess, yeah, the longest period of that time, my professional trading career probably lasted like 3.5 years total. I think that's right. Maybe a little more than 3.5. Yeah, ish. I don't know, roughly half of that I spent trading at night, which was weird too. If anybody's worked nights, I mean, I think it just like makes you a weird zombie. So I was trading and trying to write comedy and whatever in these classes. And one night I was sitting on the trading desk at like 3 a.m, something like that, trading the European shift. And I came across this op-ed in the New York Times about microlending, the concept of making tiny loans frequently to women in the developing world, because like statistics showed that if you gave the money to women, they would reinvest it in family and health and so forth. And this is shitty, but it's like what the data showed. And if the money was lent to males instead, they would, statistically speaking, tend to spend it on like alcohol and tobacco and whatever. And so like getting these tiny amounts of money to these women was a way to improve family life and like from the ground up help societies. It wasn't like a silver bullet or anything, but it was effective. It was a Nick Kristof op-ed, and this was in September of 2009. And I was sitting on the trading desk, and it was just like I had this epiphany. Like I think this is the only one like that I've truly had so far in this life. And that I got this idea, which was to make a film, a documentary film. And the shape of it was so clear to me, even in that sort of initial flash of the idea. So I got this idea that like I can make a documentary about microloans being made to women in different places in the world, because I at least would be interested in seeing that. I'd never even heard of microlending before reading that article. And I even had a sense of the locations. Like I knew that I could go to South America and then to India. And then I was thinking either Kenya or Ghana, either East or West Africa, to see what was going on with like mobile money in sub-Saharan Africa at that point in time. And then later on, we also did a shoot in Detroit because Kiva launched this initiative in Detroit. And it was I was interested in trying to see what alternate financial mechanisms like microlending could do in a city in the developed world that really needed help. So it was like sort of looking at a different application of that or something. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't know anything about anything. I found a director of photography on Craigslist who'd like had this resume that seemed fancy. He'd worked on, what had he worked on? Um, I think there was a Coen Brothers film. He'd had a career in Hollywood for like 40 years or something like that, but never as, like, maybe he'd be a camera operator, or I don't even know that he was a focus puller ever. And I didn't know anything, so I didn't know specifically what to look for, but I understood that his resume made him look fancy in a way that could probably mean I might have more likelihood of raising money, or I guess I thought that at the time or something. And then I found another guy on Craigslist who told me about Kickstarter. Kickstarter was new then, and like he had an invite to Kickstarter because I guess it was still invite only at the time. So like the concept of crowdfunding was sort of like just appearing around then at the same time. And kind of interestingly, to me at least, I remember having a meeting with Kiva, somebody from Kiva, not too long after, and this person said that like at that time the internal conversations at Kiva were all about sort of like worrying about Kickstarter. Like Kickstarter was sort of perceived to be a threat or something. So it was just, I don't know, it was kind of interesting. So we had a Kickstarter, an early Kickstarter, and raised a little bit of money, and raised money from other people who were connected to the film. I didn't like really know anyone at all. I mean, I definitely had like old friends and people from my community growing up and stuff who put in a little bit of money, you know, like $25 each or something like that. But yeah, so we got a little bit together, and this was already too involved. Basically, so we made this film. I didn't know what I was doing, as I've already said several times. And we shot in Paraguay at first and found this like beautiful family there that we followed for 2 weeks who had a daughter who, the mother was taking out microloans with a group of like 15 other women. I mean, she literally it was like 16 women, right? And in total, they got a loan for $60. And she took her couple dollar portion. No, maybe it was 15. This would make the math easier. I think it actually really was 15 women who got a loan for $60, and her portion was $4. So this woman, Pablina, used that $4 to like expand she made like sugarcane cakes because her husband was a farmer and they had sugarcane across the street. So her problem was that she could only ever get like half a stick of butter or a couple cups of sugar. They could get more sugar, couldn't they? A couple cups of flour or something at a time. So with the $4, she was able to buy like several sticks of butter and scale her business. And they were just so beautiful. They were really kind to each other. It was a big family. The youngest son had this medical problem years ago, and I guess he'd had like a 10% chance of survival, but he pulled through. And so it was just kind of this lovely story. And we shot that in, I think like February of 2010 or something. We went down for 2 weeks. I'd scouted it by myself the fall before. And then we didn't shoot anything for like another year because I was trying to raise money. And then we ended up going to India, and we found this guy, Vijay Mahajan. Mahajan actually means moneylender. And this guy was kind of like if you're familiar at all with microlending, or if you've heard of Muhammad Yunus, the guy that won a Nobel Prize in like 2006, he's from Bangladesh, although he helped form Bangladesh. Bangladesh wasn't a country until 1976, I think, or something. And I think Yunus was just kind of like a brilliant marketer. So he sort of ended up being the one who got the Nobel Prize. Vijay Mahajan was kind of like his Indian counterpart, but he was super, super smart, but I think a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? He was more open and more sort of about serving, I guess, on the ground level. I mean, the Shod Yatra, Walk of Truth, was this, he wanted to travel around India to see what was going wrong with microloans because stuff was messed up by this time, 2011. There were suicides. Sometimes there would be like predatory lenders who would threaten women who had taken out loans. Sometimes the women had taken out loans because a male relative had pressured them to take out the loan, and the loans were typically given to women, so men didn't have access to them in the same way, and so would try and use female relatives as a conduit. So yeah, this guy, Vijay Mahajan, was going on this Shodhatra, and so we followed him around India, and we were there for 3 weeks, and we went to a lot of different places, and we found this woman who was now running, at that time, was running a microfinance institution in the northern part of India, near like Dehradun. But she had also been the first female Indian Air Force pilot, and so had dealt with like discrimination there and not getting an equal pension for like equal years served, and it went to their Supreme Court and stuff. So we followed her around, but it was just that shoot was so much more. It was more expensive and more about logistics, and I brought someone with me that I shouldn't have brought with me, but I didn't know any better. And so it was just, and it ended up being a lot more difficult. And so we didn't find that same energy that we found with the family we spent the whole 2 weeks with in Paraguay. So it was just a different sort of thing. And after that, we filmed in Kenya. The Kenyan story was like a tech story because mobile money was already happening there. Kenya had just leapfrogged virtually everywhere else in the world, at least at that time, as I recall, because like there weren't landlines. I mean, this is true in many places, but one of the many factors that contributed to Kenya being so far ahead was that there weren't landlines there. So as mobile phones became more prevalent, that technology just leapfrogged. Like, you know, there was no need for landlines. People could just access phones. And a lot of people were unbanked. They didn't have bank accounts. And so M-Pesa, this organization that was like a subsidiary of British Vodafone, so it's like the effects of colonialism kind of continuing on in a sense, through capitalism, through like a different iteration of capitalism. This M-Pesa experiment had ended up really working well, and people were effectively just texting money back and forth in Kenya. And this, like I said, this was years ago. I mean, we didn't film in Kenya till, that was 2011. So yeah, it was like the summer of 2011. And, like I'm recording this now almost 10 years later, over 10 years later. It's fall now, isn't it? The seasons are all the same in LA, and I kind of forget the months a lot. They were already doing that, and what's going on with crypto in a certain sense and what's going on with mobile money in a certain sense now, like with Venmo and stuff in the developed world, or at least in the States. I don't think Venmo's used a ton outside of the US, or at least friends that I have outside of the US didn't seem to know about it. That was already happening in this very quickly scalable way in Kenya at that time. And so it was cool. We told this tech story, and like this woman had taken out a microloan to start up these little stalls where she was effectively like a human ATM kind of, where people would come in and give her cash, and she would then text them that cash into their M-Pesa accounts or vice versa. And then she would drop off the cash at the end of the day. And she was doing like super, super well. And she was the same age as I was at the time, which was 27. And she was like way more financially successful than I was and whatever. And she's living in a developing country, and I'm fucking an American from the States who's a white person. So like she was just killing it, and it was cool. It was cool to see. So we did that story, and then we went to Detroit afterward, and secretly I had a mole who told me about the Kiva City launch, which was this first initiative that I mentioned that they were doing in Detroit, to see how well it would work in Detroit. Probably, as I think about this now, although I didn't recognize it at the time, probably because they wanted to compete with Kickstarter. That's so obvious in hindsight. But so we crashed this launch, and they didn't have any video people there. So we ended up selling some footage back to them for a little bit of money. So I was like kind of proud of doing that. So we just found there were, I think, 4 different people there who were recipients of these initial Kiva loans. But it didn't seem like it worked. They were charging crazy interest rates. It was like 17 or 18% or something. So it was just like, yeah. I mean, I haven't heard much about that program since. I know they launched in New Orleans as well. As I understand, it was just like a total, like a failure in New Orleans. But I've stayed in touch with like folks that I met during that Detroit shoot who are now, one woman in particular, Delphia, has been active in the Seeds community, and she's really an incredible person. And so, yeah, that was cool. And Detroit is such a cool city. It's just like, what other city is like that? What other American city is like that? You know, like a city built for what, like 2 million with, I don't know, 500,000 people living there. I'm not sure what the numbers would be today. And just the buildings, like allowing them, like I understand that this happened more in like Germany and European cities, especially after the war. But these buildings that are old and haven't been cared for are still there, and it's so aesthetically interesting. And I think that it's just such a cool city. I really like Detroit a lot, and periodically will like look up buying a house in Detroit and kind of want to do that. And yeah, I'm just drawn to that place. But for whatever reason, my intuition tells me I'm supposed to be living in Los Angeles right now. This is way too much about my film. Sorry if this is boring. You're probably gone already, though, if it was. So I made the film, whatever, and then we couldn't get distribution and couldn't even, like, we didn't have enough money to fulfill a lot of what the Kickstarter, like, donors should have had coming to them, because, you know, like, you give at different levels to get different thank you gifts. And it's awful, and it's, like, the thing in my life that I think I'm still most ashamed of, or just I haven't cleaned it up yet. I need to go back to all of those people and apologize and just be like, we didn't know what the hell we were doing, and we didn't ask for the right amounts of money to get things done, and then we just got left in this shitty position where I'm saying it was my responsibility. It's like everything came down to me. So like those people need to be paid back. And I still haven't cleaned it up, and I really, really need to do that. And if you're one of those people and you're listening, I'm so, so sorry, and I'll fix it. I'll fix it. But then part of that lesson was that, as so many people that try to make something something that's like quote unquote artistic, or I like hesitate to use that word with this project because it was an expression, and it was certainly I was making something, but I don't know, it didn't feel like art, quote unquote, in the way that other stuff can, more so, I think. But yeah, you know, like if you've ever tried to make something, running out of money is a huge fucking problem, and raising money is a huge problem. And just like yesterday, I was listening to interviews with Sarah Polley talking about filmmaking, because I'm trying to understand how to create a feminine narrative structure, or at the least, well, I guess the aspiration ultimately will be like narrative structures that balance yin and yang energies, instead of this Joseph Campbell shit that's just like, you know, like arc, trough, denouement, whatever. The spiral course of progress seems to me to be what an example of a structure that balances masculine and feminine energies could look like. But I have no idea what that might look like in like a screenplay, and I feel like I'm meant to try and understand that kind of soon. There's a narrative film that I'd like to make at some point in the near-ish future, and I'm finding that I'm thinking about it more, like I'm kind of being like nudged to move in that direction a little bit more. So I'm trying to find like non-traditional narrative films, and so I rewatched Linklater's Slacker the other day, because that's at least, it's a different sort of structure, but it's more like, if you've ever seen Slacker, I feel like it kind of shows the place. It's sort of like a showcase then for Austin. But why did I bring up Sarah Polley? I brought her up because she was talking about how so much of the experience of being a filmmaker, even someone like her who has been nominated for multiple Oscars, I think now, and is just like so talented and smart, and I'm just really interested to see what else she does. She was saying that like most of the experience of being a filmmaker was raising fucking money. So like that's another thing that I really want Seeds to try and satisfy. Ultimately, this idea of as we're moving toward hopefully what will be as the seed system, I should say, the Seeds ecosystem grows and we're able to fulfill requests more and more quickly. My hope is that, like, what if you could redeem a single seed to get all the funding you needed to make whatever your project is, and then you don't have to spend a bunch of time and energy dealing with that shit. Like, it would be amazing. It would save a lot of people a lot of grief and a lot of time and energy. And yeah, man, I wish I'd had something like that. It was great that we had crowdfunding. It was great that existed, and it definitely helped, and that's helped a lot of people. But there needs to be an evolution past that, and I think Seeds is and can be an important part of that evolution. So yeah, that was a big learning from the film, and Yeah, and then I was like interested in microlending and was interested in gaming too. And I thought like, what if somehow you could like make microloans through a game, and found somebody that could help me build a game that sort of incorporated microlending, but it was really bad. And I went back to Duke, my alma mater, and like a comp sci class there that was looking for outside projects, worked on building a version of a microlending game in like the very earliest iterations of Seeds. This was before Seeds was even like an entity, like a legal entity or whatever. And if you know who Cody Ko is, he's like a YouTuber, and he has a lot of followers on TikTok at least too. I'm not on Instagram, but he was one of the like 4 people that worked on the project, which was weird. I'm not like in touch with him anymore or anything like that, but yeah. So Seeds was a game that incorporated microlending, and then I want to share this for anybody, I guess, who's interested in entrepreneurship or something, but also just like I really view it like it was sort of like art or something, like more than the documentary was in a certain sense, because it was like following an intuition. Like I was just interested in looking into these things more fully. And so I started pursuing it, and then it was like a series of iterations and adjustments based on what I learned as I moved through it. And I mean, a lot of people talk about how like startups are so risky or something, and Seeds is like legally a startup, although at this point I think it needs to be, the structure needs to be something else. It needs to be more decentralized. It's just like that's what I went with at the time. For several reasons. The main one was that I thought it would be the easiest way to get enough money to survive, like from investors. But yeah, like if you're interested in trying to make your own thing, like entrepreneurship or something that has a lot of entrepreneurial elements, I think it's kind of bullshit that people talk about how it's so risky and there's such a high likelihood of failing, because I think the failure just happens because people quit instead of like iterating a little. That word is so overused, but people quit instead of slightly tweaking the thing or adjusting it to figure out the way to keep it moving along. And most startup founders are like white dudes and whatever, straight white dudes. And like, I don't know. I just feel like the mythology of that is really stupid and annoying. That it's such a risky business or something. It's like a lot of it is, I think, the founder. Like, it's harder to tell if the person isn't proven and you're not able to read people very well. But if you can find somebody who really cares about what they're trying to do and you don't even have to be super smart. You just have to be smart enough. Mostly you have to just be able to keep going. You can look in their charts to see if they have Mars and Scorpio. I was thinking recently that if I were looking at trying to invest in startups or something, I would totally want to see that. I have Mars and Scorpio at like 28 degrees. So yeah, man, that's what it was. It was like microlending. The various earliest versions of Seeds were this microlending game. And then I realized the earthquake in Haiti happened in 2011, and then it was kind of like, oh, like Zynga, this was a big part of the impetus, was in Farmville, if you remember that game. They were doing a thing where they like sold, I don't know, like coins, like some kind of virtual goods within the game, and they were like, all of this, everything we're selling virtually that you can use to play this game, these virtual gold coins or whatever, the proceeds are going to go to rebuilding schools in Haiti. And then the surprise effect that Zynga saw with this is that allowing people to help someone out through the game suddenly made it like 60% more likely that that person who had never spent money in the game before would start paying, and then they would keep paying. So like Zynga didn't give a fuck. I mean, Mark Pincus, the Zynga founder, isn't like known to be like a nice dude, like a philanthropic dude. It was his sister Laura who helped us out some too, who was really the driver there. She worked in Haiti for a while. Yeah, I mean, so my point is just that Pincus only started doing that then afterward because it made them more money. So then I wondered, like, okay, what if instead of like trying to build our own shitty game that we have no idea, I don't know how to build a game, what if instead we created a tool that we could give to games that like made it possible to help people out through the game? That would probably if the Zynga's data held up, that would probably increase spend in these apps. So it would help those apps out. It would help people out who are in need at the same time. And so it could be like this win-win. So we did that for a long time, for like years. A long time is relative. But yeah, I don't know, 4 years or something. And what I learned through that is that, so we had like an SDK product, a software development kit, and we had an API as well. And SDK businesses are like challenging. It's like B to B to C kind of. You're like trying to sell to the app to integrate your thing so that the end user of the app will engage with your thing. And business is boring, isn't it? It's so fucking boring. I'm so bored with the way business is done, and I'm doing my thing right now. I'm not bored. I'm like angry at it. And I'm afraid you'll be bored. But yeah, that's what we tried to do for a while. And it was hard to raise money, as I've said before. The misogyny in venture capital was a big part of that. But it's also true that just SDK businesses are kind of hard to raise money for. I mean, there have been other people that have done it, that have gone through like Y Combinator and stuff, even one with a female co-founder. Although there's statistics, I guess, that show that having a female co-founder now, if it's a guy and a girl, then that can balance things out, and there's less misogyny from VC. But yeah, so I struggled with that for a long time. And then but it was like we were working on that, and then I was also getting interested in crypto. So I started buying crypto in 2013, specifically after the Feds. For anyone who's been around and remembers this, you could Google it obviously too. In 2013, the Feds shut down Silk Road, which was like the eBay for every illicit activity you could think of. And people paid in Bitcoin. It was 2013, and it was, I think, only Bitcoin and Litecoin were around at the time. And so the price dropped, and I thought like, oh, this, like the old stock trader in me was just like, oh, this is probably a great opportunity to buy. So I did. I started buying Bitcoin at $90 a coin, but I also noticed that previous to that, the previous all-time highs that Bitcoin had hit were about 263 around April 10th of 2013. And at the same time, Litecoin, which was supposed to be like the silver to Bitcoin's gold, had also hit its all-time highs of about $6. So I saw that like when I started buying Bitcoin at around $90 a coin, Litecoin was around $1.76. So I recognized, like just with basic arithmetic, that if I put $1,000 into Litecoin and it went back up to all-time highs, that would be a higher percentage return significantly than if Bitcoin went back up to 263 and beat those all-time highs. And I figured they'd move together in tandem. So I put as much as I could afford into Bitcoin and into Litecoin, and it ended up playing out that way. The cheaper cryptocurrency was the better trade. And by December 8th, I think, of 2013, Litecoin had hit like $42 a coin. So it was like, what is that, 26-ish X or something like that. Bitcoin went up to around 1,100 by the following January of 2014, which was still an amazing trade, but Litecoin just like beat the fuck out of it. And I think for anyone out there interested in crypto trading, a lot of that holds true today as well. Like because like Bitcoin still has an outsized influence, and there are a lot of cryptocurrencies that are Ether-based, for example. Seeds is one. So they're still often moving with Ethereum, with Ether's price. Ether's the cryptocurrency, Ethereum's the crypto network, but those words are kind of used interchangeably. So yeah, like if you can find like cheaper, good quality crypto and put more into that, there's still, even today, this likelihood that when the whole sector goes, probably all of it's going to go. If they're good quality projects. I mean, it depends to a certain extent. There are other variables to consider. But yeah, what I've seen time and time again is if you put that $1,000 into the cheaper crypto, you're going to make more than you would putting that $1,000 into the more expensive, more established crypto. So yeah, that was true back then. So that was cool. But then the trader in me took the Bitcoin position off in January of 2014. The Litecoin platform the platform I was using to trade Litecoin ripped me off and like pretended like they had to reverse the transaction because of something PayPal had told them to do, which was a lie. And I figured it out, and nobody else on Reddit caught it either, which was interesting. And I ended up having to sue them to get my Litecoin, and it took years. But that was a whole other story. So the moral of that is to be careful about the platform that you're using. I don't regret it though, because there was no other platform you could use at that time. Like Litecoin wasn't on Coinbase at that time, or I would have used Coinbase to trade Litecoin. So yeah, like I sold the Bitcoin position off in January of 2014, and it was the trader in me, to an extent, knowing that I should probably get out of the position. But I also had to pay employees because Seeds wasn't profitable yet. So yeah, it was just like a gift in that sense, but also it was shitty. I mean, I was so grateful that I had the ability that I'd made that trade and had some funds and could keep Seeds going, for a little bit longer. I knew how to keep Seeds going through that because I had these funds through crypto, but then I had to sell all my shit. And a lot of this, again, was because it was so difficult to raise funds from venture capitalists, again, largely because of misogyny in that sector. So yeah, I was like, fucked. I had to sell my own money, my crypto, to cover the bills for Seeds. And that's a big part of the reason now. It took, again, these like iterations and shifts over time. But a big part of the idea with Seeds is like, because with Seeds, you can redeem a single seed to ask for whatever amount in USD you want. We've had people redeem Seeds successfully in the past to ask for money to invest in other cryptocurrencies. We had a girl recently in Brooklyn redeem a seed to get $1,150 to buy ADA, because it looked like ADA was going to go up, and ADA did go up. So like, hopefully that helped her out. Yeah, so it's like, I don't want people to have to deal with what I had to deal with in selling all of my entire portfolio, my entire Bitcoin portfolio anyway at that time, just to pay the bills. Like, if you only have to redeem a single seed to get what you need and you can hold on to the rest of your shit, then there's that opportunity for generational wealth, or even not even generational. Like if I had been able to hold on to the Bitcoin that I had made through good trades in 2013 into 2014, I'd be real fucking rich now. And I certainly can't complain. I mean, I'm among the richest 1% in the world, right? But it's a function of, like the poor design of the old system, as we all have seen in so many different ways, is such that generational wealth can really be a huge safety net for people. Obviously, the privilege that comes with that shows itself in innumerable ways, right? And so, yeah, through Seeds, I want to try and help more people not have to be in that trap of being so stuck in scarcity that you can't do anything, and or you're just like, desperately trying to figure out how to pay your bills and even selling your shit in order to do so. Yeah, so that was how the crypto thing started. And then I was, I don't want this to get too long though either, but Seeds had applied for Techstars, which is, it's like the number 2 startup accelerator in the world or whatever. Y Combinator, YC, is thought to be like the premier startup accelerator. And we got to the semifinals. I don't know. I really liked the guy running it, this guy, Jason Seats. This would have been a program in Texas, because Techstars has locations around the world, especially now. Their thing is like trying to scale to everywhere that YC isn't. And we didn't get in, and it was a bummer. But what ended up happening was I posted something in December I was still on Facebook then. In December of 2013, I posted something about how like 3 things I'm grateful for. And one of them was Bitcoin. And this guy, Avish Bama, that I had traded with years ago in Chicago, he was a stranger, and he like cold messaged me through Facebook, because you could do that then, and asked me to help him get a job at the trading firm I was working at the time. So I helped him out. And then we ended up working together at another trading firm in town and like became friends. And it's interesting because he showed up at a couple key points in my life as though he's channeling a message for me. And this was like one of those times. So he just saw that I posted that I was grateful for Bitcoin. And he reached out, and he was going to be coming to New York soon, which is where I lived at the time. I lived in Brooklyn. And he ended up staying with me. I was just like, yeah, you can crash at my place. And so he stayed with me, and he told me about a Bitcoin startup accelerator that he had gone through the year before. He was a startup founder. His whole story is funny and interesting and emblematic of the dysfunction. And he raised so much money He's like a tall Indian American kid with glasses. And he told me a story once about how like Naval Ravikant, is he the co-founder of AngelList, or they're co-founder. There's another guy that's a co-founder, Nivi, I think. Like Naval thought that Avish was a programmer. Like he stereotyped him. He thought he was a programmer because he was like a guy of Indian descent who like had glasses, and Avish is not. He doesn't know how to program. He didn't then. But he raised so much fucking money, and he didn't even have a product for a lot of that. He raised like $17 million or something. It's just like insane what some of those dudes will raise. And very, very occasionally you'll see a woman raising a lot of money, like the girl that like got destroyed for lying about the blood processing machines. I don't even remember the name of her fucking company, but there's like a million. There are like 3 pieces of like narrative content examining all the stuff that went wrong with her thing. So there's like occasionally an exception like that, but there's so many dudes that raise a lot of money who fuck up and you don't hear about them. So Avish told me about this Bitcoin startup accelerator. It was called Boost VC. And so I applied to that, even though Seeds wasn't doing anything explicitly with crypto at that time. I just thought like, oh, maybe we could, like move the microloans to Kenya using Bitcoin or something. Like that was sort of the most obvious application. So we got in, this was in 2014, and went through, and that kept us alive for a while. And then it was still a while later, like it was only when it became very obvious. First, Ethereum had to clean up their shit. They had like the issues that resulted in the hard fork that created Ethereum Classic. I guess that was in 2016, right? And then once that was resolved, heading into 2017, then we saw that the next crypto run after 2013 to 2014, right? And like a lot of what drove the crypto run in 2017 had to do with so many projects building on top of Ethereum, because it was at that point understood to be secure enough, and it was relatively easy to mint a token, an Ethereum-based token. It's like 27-ish lines of code or something. So I realized by then, struggling through the last couple years with this SDK thing, and still focusing on microlending, and we'd expanded it so that we weren't only focusing on games, we were also focusing on other types of apps, like meditation apps and productivity apps and stuff. But it was still like, it wasn't really working. It was just like I was scraping by. And so in 2017, I had a tiny team, and we minted Seeds tokens in like October or something. Seeds, the cryptocurrency. And then kind of the floor bottomed out from underneath me not too long after. This is already getting too long. And so like I was thinking that maybe I'll do a separate podcast episode where I talk about the many, many times I went broke. Broke in, like a developed world sense. I never slept on the street, but I was technically homeless for a while. And it got so bad at one point that I was like stealing food from grocery stores and stuff. Like I didn't have enough money for food. And like I don't know, chuckling or something as I say that, but like anyone who's been in that position knows how you can't like plan long term. Like I remember hearing about this Yale study, in which they recognized, I forget what they called it, the poverty effect, maybe something like that. It's just like when you're in that scarcity frame of mind, it shuts down your brain's ability to plan long term. And I was just in that for years. So at the end of 2017, it was like the bottom kind of dropped out from underneath me. Something happened then astrologically. I think, it wasn't. Maybe it was, I should have looked this up in advance because it's kind of interesting, but maybe I can talk about it later when I know more about what I'm talking about. I guess Saturn went into Capricorn around then. And Capricorn's my 10th house and my Jupiter's in Capricorn. It was just like I needed to redesign and fix everything about Seeds, and I became very, very broke. And it got so bad that at one point while I was stealing food from grocery stores in that period, I was also like, we had a co-working space I was behind. Seeds was behind on the payments. And I would like sneak in there at night and sleep on this couch they had upstairs. And I don't think anybody knew I was doing that. And then I couldn't buy food. This is probably better for another podcast where I talk about brokenness, but just quickly, if you've ever heard of the startup Gobble, the founder of that, Ushma Gorge, maybe it's George, she was investing in female founded startups because this was like right after Me Too, and I was involved in like the tech version of Me Too. I'd like made this shared Google sheet that I shared with a bunch of like female startup founders, and they would share experiences that they had had with sexual assault or harassment in tech, and they could do it anonymously or put their names to it. And so like one effect of that was that some like kind of shitty, not real fund was created that was supposed to sort of address these issues. And it was, run by a bunch of female founders, and this woman from Gobble was one of them. And I pitched her, and she was like, well, I'll get back to you in like a week, I think she said. And then a much longer period of time than that went by. And I'd messaged her, and I was just like, yo, like, I'm so broke, I can't buy food. And she was like, usually founders, when they're pitching investors especially, are not honest. They certainly don't share something as transparently as that. And it was kind of hard to do, but not that hard to do. I don't know. It wasn't, I guess I don't know. There was like this euphemism, aggression of numbers, that people would use when talking about how most like male founders would pitch VC, like they'd exaggerate their numbers. And it skewed things in this way where if you went in and actually told what was really going on, you sounded like way shittier because people had lied about how they're actually doing. Anyway, Ushma told me she'd like send me $200 to buy food, and she didn't do that. So I've mostly forgiven that, but I hope that, Seeds is working to try and help people out so that they're not in that position. I mean, if she hadn't told me that she would give me it, that would have been a different thing. But yeah, she told me she'd give me $200 to buy food and did not deliver. So like, yeah, I'm like sitting on the couch at this co-working space where I'm like late on the payments, and I'm like sneaking in there and like trespassing or something. I was friends with people that were there and stuff, and they were cool and nice. But I was sitting on that couch. It was like a Saturday morning, and I started doing Vipassana meditation. It was just like, I don't know what the fuck I'm gonna do. Like I don't have enough money to do anything at all. And as I was meditating, no joke, no exaggeration, the idea to look at PayPal came into my head. So I did that right away, and it turned out we had a PayPal credit line for thousands of dollars available. And then I found out that I think like Southwest accepted PayPal. So I was able to book a plane ticket to my parents' house in Ohio. So I did that. And when I took the BART, did people say the BART? When I took BART to the airport, I like had to sneak in and stuff. I didn't have enough money to pay for like subway fare, metro fare, or whatever. But yeah, so Vipassana, whatever comes through whenever you're doing Vipassana, really, really helped me out in that moment. And I got back to my parents' house, and I was 33 years old. And I didn't and don't have a good relationship with them, but they didn't like turn me away. They let me stay there. They didn't make me pay rent. They let me eat. And I'm very, very grateful for that. So I was able to do that for a while to get seeds in a place where like it could exist and I could exist, and start to grow it with like a more solid footing. Yeah, so there's a lot more to that story. The shift, TikTok has helped out a lot in like the last year and a half or so. That's been a way to reach more people. Hopefully this podcast will connect with people who resonate with what we're trying to do with feminine energy and giving and bringing a balance into new, like kinder economic systems. And then we have this crypto course that I started teaching in like early 2020 as well. And that's been a boon. So if you give through Seeds, if you make a gift, it's at seedsgives.com/help. 100% of what you give will go to people in need who've made a request for help, who've redeemed a seed to make a request for help. And like I've said before, if you listen to earlier podcasts or heard me talk elsewhere, if you give, say, $25 to help someone in need, we'll send you at least $25 worth of seeds in thanks at current market price at the time you make your gift. And the thinking there is that we want the giving people to have crypto so that they can build wealth in crypto, because that'll make the world a better place. So when we do that, like I said, 100% of what you're giving goes through and reaches somebody in need. So I started teaching this class on crypto trading as a way to allow seeds to sustain itself, so that 100% of gifts coming through the system can go to people in need. Yeah, and so we pay out the gifts in seeds as well. And so when extra funds come into our system that are not going to operations, our operations costs are quite low because they've had to be, because I had to make things, I had to survive. Then we put that into the pool for staking. We stake that cryptocurrency. We'll use Ether and seeds in a seeds Ether pool on Uniswap to create the marketplace that allows us to pay out seeds to those who need help, so that they can then sell for Ether and then for fiat currency if they need to trade right away. So in that way, we've been able to get funds. Like literally just today, we sent funds to someone in South Sudan who had redeemed a seed to ask for $600 to buy 10 hospital beds for women who have HIV at a health center there, so that they can like help out more people who need healthcare. And crypto makes that possible. DeFi makes that possible in a way that the traditional system doesn't. And again, there's nothing like seeds that's doing anything remotely like that. So, but I just brought this up because the crypto course, it's called Cryptocurrency and How to Trade It, that I teach. If anyone's interested, when you sign up for that, we'll send you, if you pay in full, it's $19.99, $2,000. We'll send you $2,000 worth of seeds at market price when you sign up. So it makes the course effectively free. And so you have the crypto and that allows us to keep working to try and help people out. And just to keep trying to do that until seeds on the market, until the marketplace itself. I mean, I like teaching the course, so it's something I might continue for much longer than it's sort of like just necessary in order to sustain us. But it does sustain us. It helps us out a lot when people do that. So if that's interesting to you, there's a wait list. It's at seedsgifts.com/waitlist. And we're going to do one more live in 2021. And they're fun. I like doing them a lot. They span 3 months in time, and there's sort of like a core period. We call them the core modules, that takes place over about 4 weeks. It's 2 sessions a week over 4 weeks, and I teach it live, and then I also record it, so that way you can watch whenever you want. You can come live if you want, and if you can't come live, you can watch later. Yeah, so there's that as well. I think I'll stop with that today. I still feel like this was really boring. But if you listen this far, it's really nice of you. I really appreciate you. My dog's growling behind me, if you heard that. I'll let you go. This is Rachel. This is Spiritual Crypto. If you want to check out what we're up to at Seeds, our website is seedsgives.com, seedsgives.com. We have a Discord community where you can hang out, and like we're talking in there every day. I will see you next time. Thank you.